The judge's gavel barely hit before my daughter-in-law's apology video played on the courtroom screen, her own voice admitting what she'd done. I didn't gloat. I simply signed the papers that ended their claim forever. Peace finally on paper, not promise. But something new was waiting in that sealed envelope. The smell of beef stew filled my kitchen, thick and slow, like the kind of comfort that used to make John hum while setting the table. I stirred the pot, tasting it for salt, steam curling against the window. Outside, the magnolia branches brushed the glass, tapping lightly in rhythm with the gospel song playing on the old radio. My husband's photo leaned near the spice rack, smiling as if approving every pinch of seasoning. The house had its rhythm, one I built, one I paid for, one I kept alive. Rhea sat at the counter, scrolling her phone, her face caught in that blue light that makes people look far away, even when they're right beside you. "Smells wonderful, Mom," she said without looking up. Cassian walked in behind her, shoes still on, water dripping from his glass onto my wood counter. I wiped the ring he left without a word. In my house, I thought. I keep things standing, bills, order, peace. But saying it aloud always felt like a declaration of war. When I called them to dinner, Cassian didn't even lift his head. "Give me a sec," he said, thumb still tapping his screen. By the time he sat, he took John's old seat at the head of the table like it had his name carved on it. My chest tightened, but I smiled. "That's John's chair," I said softly. "Well, he's not using it now," Cassian replied, half laughing. Rhea shot me a pleading glance, one that said, "Please, Mom, don't start." So I just served. Cassian sniffed the stew. "Don't cook for the dead," he said, loud enough for the silverware to stop clinking. I froze, ladle hovering. "We eat to remember, not to perform," I replied, placing cornbread beside his bowl. The silence after that was heavier than the stew itself. Rhea whispered, "Mom, it smells amazing," but didn't correct him. That silence from your own child, that's what cuts deepest. I watched them eat, their phones lighting the table, napkins tossed aside, words careless. Every act went into my mental ledger. When you've lived long enough, you learn that people show you who they are in small ways first. I just hadn't expected it to happen over dinner. Halfway through the meal, Cassian leaned back. "By the way," he said, "Mom and Dad are going to crash here a bit. House Reno went sideways." His tone was too casual, the kind men use when the decision's already made. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "Mercia and Linford," he said. Rhea's fork clinked. "It's temporary, Mom, just until the contractor fixes the leak." "The guest room's full," I said. "No, sofa bed's broken. That won't work." Cassian smiled like he was humoring me. "They're already on their way. Family helps family, right?" That's when I knew this wasn't a request. It was a move, a quiet one. I stayed calm, like my mother taught me to when snakes came too close. "We'll discuss space, time, and costs," I said. "This isn't a motel." He shrugged. "It'll be fine. You'll see." The front door opened before another word could land. Mercia's perfume arrived first, sharp and floral. "What a darling place," she said, eyes sweeping my living room like she was checking square footage. Linford dropped his duffel on my rug. "This pulls out, right?" he asked, patting the couch. "We'll make do," Cassian beamed. "Make yourselves at home," he said, his voice too loud, too proud. I stood straighter. "We'll talk in the morning. Tonight, keep your bags by the hall." My voice was soft, but it carried weight. Dinner ended with half-eaten plates. As I cleared them, Cassian murmured just loud enough, "Eudora can take the couch, or better yet, a hotel. Keep things simple." Rhea gasped. "Cassian," but she didn't stop him. I set the plate down gently. No slam, no scene. Inside, something locked in place. I washed my hands. Steady movements, the water running louder than anyone's voice. My grandmother used to say, "Calm isn't weakness. It's the sound of planning." When I looked up, the magnolia shadow stretched long across the porch. If a hotel is what he thinks a mother deserves, I whispered. "He'll soon learn what a homeowner can decide." At sunrise, I put the kettle on. The house sounded alive, but not with my rhythm. Footsteps that weren't mine creaked in the hallway. I opened the file drawer beside the fridge, the one John told me to keep tight. "Paper protects you," he used to say. And I believed him. The folders were still where I left them. Mortgage, utilities, trust, insurance. I spread them across the dining table like a quiet fence line. Then I wrote 3 questions on a yellow pad. How long? Which room? Costs. The kind of things adults settle before making themselves comfortable. I texted Rhea, "Let's talk over brunch at 10:30. She replied with a plain, "Okay." No heart, no punctuation. That hurt more than an argument. It's in the mirror. I practiced one sentence. "This is my home, and I make the rules here." The goal wasn't to win, it was to stay standing. By mid-morning, the table was set. I made eggs, grits, and sliced tomatoes. Nothing fancy. I wanted conversation, not celebration. Cassian came first, still glued to his phone, sliding right into John's old seat like he owned it. Mercia arrived next, smiling too wide. "We'll modernize this space in no time," she said, glancing around. Linford reached for the TV remote before greeting me. "Where's the news?" "Quiet house," he muttered. I placed my hand gently on the remote and moved it aside. "We'll talk first," I said. Calm as a church bell. Rhea walked in last, hesitation written across her face. I patted the chair beside me. She chose the one between us instead. I took a breath. "I'm glad everyone's here. Let's make a plan that works for everyone." I placed my notepad on the table, pen ready. Cassian smirked. "Well, since we're 5, Eudora can take the couch, or maybe a hotel. Better sleep for everyone." Mercia chuckled. "She's spry. A couch won't kill her." Linford grinned. "You'd better leave." "Ma'am, not enough space for 5. The room went still. My daughter stared at her plate, her silence thick as fog. I sipped my coffee and said evenly, "There will be enough room for the homeowner. That's me." I spoke slow enough for each word to land. "The guest room stays closed until we agree. No luggage in the hall. We share costs, dates in writing." Cassian scoffed. "All this paperwork. You think we're checking into a motel? We're checking into respect." I said. Mercia folded her napkin, murmuring, "Family helps family." "Help," I replied. "Shouldn't erase boundaries." Linford leaned toward Rhea. "We'll handle it. Pumpkin?" I slid a blank guest form across the table. Calm hands, steady pen. Rhea whispered, "Mom, please, don't make this a thing." I smiled faintly. It became a thing when I was reassigned the couch. After brunch, Rhea stayed behind. "Cassian's under pressure," she said softly. "His parents are complicated." I rinsed a plate. "Pressure doesn't buy deed rights." She looked down. "You've changed." I dried my hands. "No, baby, I've just stopped apologizing for having a house key." That evening, after running errands, I returned to find the front door locked. My key turned but didn't open. The keypad flashed red. A note was taped to the inside window. "Residents only." The handwriting looped and neat. Mercia's. Through the glass, Linford waved toward the side door. The way you'd wave to a delivery driver. I called out, "I'll collect my mail tomorrow with a witness." At home, I stacked folders, labeled envelopes, folded 3 sets of clothes into a small weekender. Calm doesn't mean surrender. It means preparation. I wrote to my neighbor Loretta. "Could you be present when I stop by tomorrow?" Then I circled Monday on the calendar beside John's photo and whispered, "You told me to keep the papers tight. I'm listening." At 7:30, a message pinged on my phone, a family group photo, all smiles at my dining table. The caption read, "Family under one roof. God is good." My name wasn't in the tag. I placed the phone face down, slid the trust folder into my tote, and turned off the light. In the morning, I wouldn't ask for space. I'd establish it. I woke before dawn, long before the house stirred. The air was heavy with that kind of silence that comes after hurt. Not peace, just the quiet left behind when words fail. The HVAC hummed like a low reminder that this was still my home, even if it no longer sounded like me. I sat on the edge of the bed, took a slow breath, and decided I wouldn't fight for space I already owned. I'd make new space, my way. The rain outside was gentle, like it understood. I packed carefully, not like someone escaping, but someone choosing order over chaos. A week's worth of clothes, my medications, copies of the trust papers, insurance cards, and John's photo folded between files in the kitchen. I made tea and wrote a short note for Rhea. We'll talk with a witness. No scolding, no plea, just boundaries printed in ink. I took a picture of the front keypad and latch, a timestamp of truth, and slid my phone into my coat pocket. When the rideshare driver pulled up, he greeted me. "Early morning, huh?" I smiled. "Some mornings, you just start over." The porch light stayed on behind me. I left it glowing on purpose, a quiet message that I wasn't leaving out of shame. As the car rolled through the slick streets, magnolia branches blurred past. I didn't look back. I'd already seen enough. The River Street studio was small but solid, a brick building that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and river air. The landlord showed me around. 2 rooms, 1 window. Everything worked. "Month to month only," I said. He nodded, surprised but respectful. I tested the water pressure, checked the locks, then placed the trust folder on the counter. My new beginning started with paper. Not promises. By 10, I brewed tea in my new mug, watching ships move slowly on the gray water. There was peace in that motion. Deliberate. Unhurried. I pinned a church bulletin to the fridge, circling Calder Prin's name in red pen. Tomorrow, I'd call the lawyer. I opened a new notebook and wrote across the first page, House. January. Beneath it, I listed everything I'd witnessed, the keypad code change, the residents-only note, who said what, who stayed silent. Feelings were one thing, facts were another, and I added expenses. Every light bill, grocery receipt, home repair. I wrote a rule to myself, no arguments, no favors I can't document. No more being the only adult in the room. At 10:30, Loretta met me in front of the house, her bright yellow tote disguising a phone recording. I rang the doorbell once. Rhea opened it, looking like she hadn't slept. "We're here for my mail," I said evenly. Mercia appeared behind her, smiling too sweetly. "So nice to see you, dear." I accepted my envelopes without stepping inside. Linford called out, "Need anything else?" I turned to him. "Only respect." As we walked away, Loretta whispered, "You did right, Miss Eudora." I smiled faintly. "Now I'll do smart." Later that afternoon, I sat in a coffee shop off Broughton Street, spreading my mail on a small wooden table. Utility spikes, HOA updates, small tells of life still running in my house without me. I drafted a calm email to Rhea and Cassian with a guest agreement attached. No anger, just clarity. I called the bank and scheduled an appointment. Then I searched property records on my phone. People forget that paper leaves tracks, but I don't. When I stepped outside, drizzle misted my coat. My phone buzzed. Savannah First Bank. "This is Eudora Keene," I said, steady as a plumb line. The voice on the other end hesitated. "Mrs. Keene, we flagged some activity we'd like to verify." My hand tightened on the ledger in my bag. The rain softened, but my pulse didn't. "What activity?" I asked, already knowing this story wasn't over. When the call from the bank ended, I sat still for a breath. The kind you take before the next move. The banker had confirmed everything I suspected. Someone had tried to move funds tied to my household address, claiming to be family. I verified every passcode and memory marker I'd set years ago. The teller's name from my last in-branch visit. My recurring church donation pattern. All correct. "You're still protected, Mrs. Keene," the banker said, voice steady. I thanked her and wrote every detail in my ledger. Time, name, reference number. Paper was armor. I'd learned that from John. I asked for the fraud packet to be printed and told her I'd pick it up in person. By 11:15, I was inside Savannah First Bank, that quiet hum of carpeted authority under my feet. The banker met me at the counter with a folder marked Fraud Hold. I read each line aloud before signing. No third-party authority. Verbal password required. No family proxy under any circumstance. You'd be surprised how often urgent family calls in, she said. I smiled. I wouldn't be surprised at all. We added two-factor authentication, transaction caps, and a new sub-account for home repairs. Funds traceable only to me. When she showed me the caller notes, I saw it. My middle name misspelled, my church listed wrong, someone close enough to guess, not close enough to know. As I left, I texted Loretta. Paper speaks. Meet me at 5:30 for witness posting. After lunch. I headed to the HOA office. Folder in hand, the manager, Mr. Green, looked surprised when I walked in with everything tabbed. I explained calmly that I was temporarily off-site by choice, not displaced. Any communication about residency must include my authorization. I said I provided copies of the deed, trust statement, and photos of the keypad lock. He nodded quickly. We'll circulate a community reminder. Neutral, policy-based. Perfect, I replied. Let's let policy do the talking. I documented every minute, every signature, then handed a note for the patrol. Call if gatherings exceed quiet hours. At the neighborhood green, I found Mercia mid-performance. She stood with two neighbors, sympathy dripping from her tone. We're just helping Eudora through a hard time. I didn't interrupt. I simply approached, smiled, and said, Good afternoon. The neighbors greeted me warmly, Mrs. Keen. The name itself reset the power in the air. I mentioned casually that the HOA would send a reminder about guest policies, then asked about recycling pickup. Linford tried a smirk. All that paperwork seems exhausting. I met his eyes. Paper's how homes stay homes. The women beside him nodded. Conversation over. I walked away first, leaving them holding their unfinished play. At 5:30, Loretta met me on the porch, phone recording discreetly. Together. We taped the laminated guest agreement to the front door. Clear font, waterproof sleeve, no third-party changes without owner consent. I photographed it beside the day's newspaper for timestamp proof. The door opened halfway. Mom? Ria's voice was small. I smiled faintly. We'll talk, sweetheart, with witnesses present. Behind her, Mercia's silhouette hovered. I pointed to the claws, then stepped back. No raised voices, no threats, just law standing where emotion once did. Loretta sent me the video file that evening. Hash-stamped and sealed, back at my studio, I brewed tea and opened my laptop. The email subject line was simple. Household logistics, confirmed boundaries, one-page PDF attached, guest agreement, bank notice summary, meeting time offer. I CC'd Calder Prynne and the HOA manager. Not Mercia. Authority has structure. My final line read, All future favors must be requested in writing. I clicked send. Checked the box marked phase, boundaries confirmed, and exhaled. Minutes later, a reply appeared. From Cassian's account, but the tone wasn't his. Too polished, too rehearsed. It complained of my tone. Demanded access and keys for family coordination. I scrolled to the footer and smiled. The sender's metadata listed Mercia. Consulting at gmail.com. I whispered to the empty room. Thank you, Mercia, and hit download. The day began with quiet drizzle and my second cup of tea cooling beside the ledger. Loretta had texted earlier, checking in after yesterday's postings. Then another message arrived from a neighbor, a screenshot of my own home, listed on a short-term rental site. Is this you hosting again, she wrote. I nearly laughed, not from humor, but disbelief. The listing called it a family-managed southern retreat, with host on site. The photos were unmistakable. Porch angles, my magnolia wreath, the antique bench I refinished myself. Metadata didn't lie. The upload was within 48 hours. I saved the URL, timestamp and seller ID, printing a full-page PDF from my ledger. Then I called the platform's support line. Voice calm but direct. This property is listed without authorization. I am the deeded owner. I attached the trust documents. Before hanging up, I sent a message to the host account. Withdraw immediately. You have no authority. Barely 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. A group text from Cashin's number. Mom, emergency vet bill. Need $1,200 ASAP. I frowned. Cashin would call, not text. A second message followed with a routing number. I replied. Clinic name? Invoice number? The pause was long enough to confirm my suspicion. Then a reply from Mercia's contact appeared. A photo of a random invoice with cropped edges. My lips pressed thin. I forwarded the thread to my email, titled it Attempted Financial Pressure, and archived it. To Cassian alone, I texted, Call me directly if this is real. He didn't. I wrote in my ledger. Pressure tactic followed platform complaint. These coincidences were stacking too neatly. At noon, I drove to the house and parked by the sidewalk. I opened my doorbell camera app. Subscription active. Access still mine. I downloaded every clip from the last 7 days. One clip showed Mercia instructing Rhea, say she needed time away. Makes it sound sympathetic. Another. Later in the week, caught Mercia's voice saying, if we list 2 weekends, that'll cover the Audi payment. I didn't flinch. I exported the files, time-stamped, and saved them to 2 USB drives. Loretta met me curbside, signed her name in my ledger as witness. You keep that calm like armor, she murmured. I smiled faintly. Calm keeps the record straight. By mid-afternoon, I sat across from an officer at the downtown precinct, my folder open. Unauthorized property listing and suspicious financial contact. I said. I handed over the printed documents. Deed copy, trust statement, platform claim number, text thread, and the video transcript. The officer nodded, impressed by the order. He filed an incident report, gave me the number, and walked me through the next step. Signage, notice, and service before enforcement. You're building a wall of proof, he said. Exactly, I replied. Paper doesn't forget. Back at the studio, I joined a video call with Calder Prynne and the HOA manager. I shared my screen. The rental listing, now frozen under investigation. Calder confirmed it was an HOA covenant breach. He drafted 2 letters on camera, a cease and desist to the host and a notice, citing HOA violation. Delivery method, he asked. Certified mail, email, and a posted copy with witness. I said. Loretta's name came up again. We scheduled the postings for tomorrow, before dusk. I changed the doorbell master password, rotated my Wi-Fi plan, and updated every login. I set motion detection for the driveway only. No invasion, just observation. I packed the spare USB for my bank appointment tomorrow and booked a locksmith for the following week. On the kitchen counter, I left a note to myself. No more off-book kindness, only on-paper fairness. As I closed my laptop, a ping arrived. The rental platform had suspended the listing, pending verification, mine. Then another email appeared from an unfamiliar address. Subject, we need to talk before you ruin everything. The body read, meet me alone. No witnesses or I'll make calls you won't like. I stared at the screen, took a breath, and hit forward to Calder. My message was short. We'll talk. With witnesses and paper. I arrived early at the HOA clubhouse, the kind of beige room built for potlucks and power plays. Calder Prynne was already there. Crisp suit, 3 folders open like a courtroom table. Gloria Stansel, the HOA manager, followed with her binder marked Emergency Agenda. We reviewed our lineup, platform claim, police report, and doorbell audio hashes. No drama, just structure. We go by order, Calder said. Facts, then playback, then remedy. Loretta sat near the back, pen poised for timestamps. I repeated my mantra quietly. Paper over volume, process over feelings. By the time Mercia and Rhea arrived, perfume sharp and smiles rehearsed, I had turned calm into armor. Mercia began her speech before the meeting was called to order. We've been taking care of Eudora's home since she left. I didn't blink. Gloria cleared her throat and read from the HOA covenant. No short-term rentals without written authorization by the deeded owner. Calder pressed play on the doorbell clip. Mercia's voice filled the room. 2 weekends cover the Audi payment. The silence that followed was clean, surgical. Rhea stammered something about context. but Gloria already had the platform suspension notice on the projector. The board voted unanimously for immediate fines and a removal order, Calder added. Mrs. Keene's Trust Authority restricts access until full compliance. They nodded, signing off like clerks stamping time. I didn't smile, but I allowed myself to breathe again. Outside, the air was humid, tense. A process server approached with precision. 3 envelopes, each stamped and sealed. Cease and desist, access revocation, and meeting schedule, he said, handing them to Mercia and Rhea. Calder verified signatures while I stood by the gate, holding my ledger like scripture. This is an eviction, I said, calm as prayer. It's a boundary reset. Mercia raised her phone to film, but Calder's tone cut through. You're on HOA common ground. Filming residents without consent violates policy. She froze. Comply in writing by 3 o'clock, I said evenly, or we proceed. No more back and forth. Even the wind paused. 2 police officers arrived for the scheduled peacekeeping. I handed over the incident number and proof of service. If they breach post-Riki, I said, I'll need the trespass warning cued. The senior officer nodded. Scanning each page, Rhea snapped. This is family property. Calder slid forward the trust deed with my name in ink. Family doesn't override record, he said. Voice steady. The officers advised all exchanges remain outside the threshold. Paper protects everyone, one added. I thanked them. They noticed my careful notes, and that small acknowledgement steadied something deep inside me. Loretta added her signature to the margin of my ledger like a seal of faith. By midday, Mercia's counterattack began. A voicemail promising to call Channel 6 and expose the injustice. I transcribed and saved it. Minutes later, an email arrived, some fabricated claim that my trust was invalid. Calder responded with the recorded assignment and the county archive link. Rhea sent Cassian a text. Come handle your mother. I simply forwarded it to Calder. No reply needed. The HOA emailed their fine notice, amount, timeline, escalation. The platform confirmed permanent removal of the rental listing. I added one more line to my to-do list. Bank drop for my second USB after the Riki. Belt and suspenders. At noon, a tow truck rumbled into view. The repo driver stepped out, clipboard in hand. Silver Audi, VIN ending 4472, he asked. I nodded toward the driveway. Mercia's shriek cracked the quiet. It's impossible. This can't be happening. Neighbors emerged like a slow tide, curiosity masked as concern. Rhea pleaded with the driver, but he showed her the contract, missed payments months long. The hydraulic hook lifted, the tires squealed, and for once, I felt gravity on my side. I didn't smirk. I simply folded my hands and watched professionalism meet consequence. The driver thanked me for staying civil. Always better with witnesses, I said. Minutes later, Calder texted. Final notice drafted. Send, I typed back. Send now. Then my phone vibrated again. Mercia's email. We refuse and we're not leaving. I turned to the officer beside me and spoke as the locksmith van turned onto the street. 4 o'clock, I said softly. We'll be here. The locksmith worked with quiet efficiency, his drill humming like a low hymn. When the final lock clicked, I signed the work order and recorded the timestamp in my ledger. The officers explained retrieval protocol. 2 windows, supervised, no entry past the foyer. Calder emailed copies before they'd even left the driveway. I drafted a checklist for essentials. Medications, IDs, weather clothes, nothing that could be twisted into cruelty. My camera filmed a slow walk through the rooms, one unbroken take from hallway to kitchen. Paper, timestamps, no speeches, I whispered, sealing the moment with steadiness instead of satisfaction. By the time Mercia appeared, phone raised like a torch. Her eyes brimmed with rehearsed outrage. This is elder abuse, she cried, her camera rolling. I stayed in the doorway, voice even. Please send all concerns to council, Rhea hissed to a neighbor. She locked us out of our own family home. The neighbor tilted her head. Are you on the deed? Silence answered for them both. Officers dispersed the crowd. Loretta, neutral but sharp, noted that I'd offered water and printed information about shelters. The generosity wasn't for them, it was for the record. When the porch finally cleared, the air carried something different. Their performance had lost its audience. The applause had gone digital. At 5:04 p.m., my phone pinged, bank alert, attempted transfer flagged from a rental payout into the shared utility account. Compliance froze it within seconds. The insurer followed with a notice. Unauthorized occupants nullified certain coverages until rectified. Inspection scheduled. Surcharge applied. HOA's second fine arrived by email, liens pending if unpaid. Calder's message came next. City code filing complete. I printed each attachment, labeled and stacked them like bricks. Every one proof that civility, when documented, becomes power. That evening, the neighborhood group chat turned to wildfire. Gloria posted the HOA covenant, no names, just the rule. Neighbors remembered the cars, the strangers dragging suitcases at midnight. They connected the dots without me lifting a finger, Loretta commented. We asked for quiet. She brought paper. Private messages trickled in. Praise, empathy, admiration. I read them once and archived them. Validation is wind, it moves you forward, but it can't be home. Cassian showed up just before sunset, shoulders heavy, apology rehearsed, but real. Can we talk, Mom, without Calder? I nodded, staying on the porch where the door cam could see us both. He swore he didn't know about the rentals. Then who gave out the access code? I asked. He hesitated. I told Ria's parents they could use it while they visited. I handed him a printed copy of the trust clause and the HOA rule he'd signed as guest acknowledgement. Intent doesn't erase paperwork, I said softly. He asked, how do I fix this? Counseling, I replied. Apology letters to the board and neighbors. 90 days separate living, respect in writing first. He nodded slowly, texted Ria that he wouldn't pay the fines, and drove away. The silence he left was cleaner than the one he'd entered with. Retrieval Day 1 arrived under gray skies. Mercia and Ria came flanked by officers. The rules were simple. 20 minutes, 2 rooms, no electronics. I held the clipboard, marking each item aloud. When Ria reached for a framed print, I stopped her gently. Purchased by me, dated receipt here. The officer confirmed. A neighbor filmed from the sidewalk. Public space. Legal. And entirely their choice. I didn't object. Truth needs witnesses more than sympathy. The scene played like a slow exhale. By the time they left, all that remained was order and dust. That night, my kitchen table became a command post again. I tabbed dividers, bank, HOA, insurance, police, locksmith. A 2-page chronology took shape. Plain language, precise dates. I drafted an estate addendum. No future cohabitation without written contract, no verbal favors. Calder and I discussed a civil claim for unlawful enrichment. I wrote it all down until the paper felt warm beneath my hands. Then I lit a candle beside James's photo and whispered, "You'd like how I handled it." Before bed, Sister May called, "Proud of you, baby." "You kept your peace," I smiled. James used to say, "You don't have to raise your voice if your paperwork is loud." Dinner was simple. Greens, cornbread, tea. My ledger closed neatly beside me. The house creaked again like it remembered its owner. At 10:42 p.m., a final email arrived from an alias tied to Mercia, listing my home again under a new name. The photos were recent. Calder replied within minutes. "We have our link. Filing at 9. I forwarded it to the officer and looked around the quiet room. Round 2 starts at daylight, I said to the walls that now belonged only to me. The courthouse doors opened with a metallic sigh. I stood beside Calder Prynne, folder pressed to my chest, the morning cool enough to keep tempers low. Inside, the clerk stamped our TRO packet, alias listings, screenshots, door cam logs. The sound of the date stamp hitting paper was cleaner than any gavel. Across the aisle, Mercia sat with a lawyer she'd scraped together overnight. Her expression stretched between outrage and exhaustion. The judge reviewed affidavits, trust terms, HOA covenants, police reports, insurance notices. When Calder introduced Exhibit E, the alias listing with photos of my living room, a ripple went through the courtroom. I didn't flinch. I spoke evenly. I want safety, restitution, and peace. No more access. No more spin. The judge's tone softened as he said, "We can resolve this by consent, for once." Silence worked in my favor. The consent judgment unfolded like a measured symphony. Disgorgement of all platform profits, reimbursement for fines and legal fees within 30 days, a 1-year no-contact order, extendable, and a deed rider forever blocking Mercia or Rhea from claiming occupancy or rental rights. The judge required a public apology, a 1-minute video to run for 90 days. They would surrender access immediately and retrieve their remaining items only under police escort. Court retained jurisdiction for enforcement. I signed with a steady hand, pen gliding across the page, the weight that had followed me for months lifted in that small, deliberate motion. At noon, Calder and I drove straight to the recorder's office. The deed rider was filed before lunch. The stamped copy slid across the counter toward me like a quiet trophy. HOA board met that afternoon, Loretta Haynes presiding, and formally adopted the court's ruling. The insurer reinstated my full coverage after inspection. Lifting the surcharge, the bank confirmed the freeze review was complete and closed the tainted sub-account. Paper trails had built my fortress, and now the gates stood firm. Cassian arrived that evening, worn and subdued. "I signed the counseling plan," he said, sliding the papers across my table. He'd handwritten apology letters to the HOA and neighbors, sealed and dated. I nodded. "This is a start." He asked if trust could ever return. "Trust is earned in layers, not in leaps," I told him, remembering James's steadiness. Cassian swallowed his pride, signed a notarized acknowledgement of the no-contact order, and left quietly. For the first time, his departure didn't sting. It felt like a clean breath. The following morning, Mercia's video apology appeared online. 1 minute, scripted, legal. I acknowledge my violations and extend an apology to Mrs. Keene. Comments were disabled, but the message was clear. Rhea's duplicate video followed within hours, her account now labeled permanently removed for policy violations. Neighbors saw, some nodded, some didn't comment at all. I didn't need vindication. The paperwork had already spoken. I sent a single post to the community board. "Matter resolved. Please respect the order." Loretta dropped by later with peach cobbler, saying, "Sometimes the quietest win is the safest one." She was right. The oxygen had finally left the drama. I spent the next day sealing peace into permanence. My notary witnessed an irrevocable occupancy addendum. No guest could stay over 14 days without written approval. I updated the trust. Generosity tied to behavior. Housing privileges excluded. Installed a small vestibule camera. Posted a sign that simply read "Monitored Entry" on the hallway table. I left a laminated house charter. Rules written with calm authority. Then I set fresh camellias by James's photo and whispered, "We finished it right." That weekend, the neighborhood gathered for a quiet potluck. Gloria brought sweet tea, the plumbers their famous cobbler. We sat on my porch, laughing about Wi-Fi names. I renamed mine Paperwork Wins. Cashin's apology letters reached the neighbors. They read them before I did. Conversation drifted to weather and church schedules, the way normal life feels after a long storm. The house no longer echoed. It hummed. That night, tea steaming beside me, I recorded a voice memo. "You kept your peace and kept your place." I locked the door, placed the judgment copy in my safe, and sent brief thank you texts to Calder and Loretta. As I sat on the porch, the cicadas stitched the air together again. I looked toward the photo of James inside the window and said softly, "We chose dignity." It held. When I turned off the porch light, I thought it was over, but as I stacked the last of the files, an envelope slid through the mail slot. Thick, official, postmarked South Carolina. The label read, "Quitclaim Notice, Family Interest Inquiry." My name printed cleanly underneath. I stared at it, then smiled. "Tomorrow," I murmured, "after coffee, with a new legal pad." As the porch light fades, I hold the South Carolina envelope under the lamp. The seal bears my maiden initials, something only James ever used. My pulse steadies, but my mind races. Why would his name appear now? Inside might be another claim, or a secret he never told.